So now that the axle is under the truck and is pretty much going to stay there, I've gone ahead and I've bought some new parts. So I got some flex lines for the front and one of the ABS sensors to replace the one that was ripped. Shouldn't be too bad of a job. Let's get at it. Don't mind the noise, guys, but they're finally paving the road out front of the house. Alright, so one main problem I ran into was that this ferrule is stuck on this brake line. So I undid this, which was the remainder of the flex line. But the problem is now I'm going to have to somehow loosen that nut up, probably with heat. And also the bleeders, the brake bleeders, are seized in there, so I'm going to have to get some heat to undo those so we can bleed these brakes out. So typically vehicles don't have these corrosion issues like main vehicles do. You know, I tried to undo this nut here and it just kind of broke on me. Come to find out, that's not even the original bolt. That's some 1/4-inch bolt with a fender washer that someone stuck in there to hold that to the axle. So I did get lucky and the bleeder came free. So I'm going to take and clean that bleeder out. There's a little hole down the center that's going to be clean to line up with that hole on the side. And also the banjo bolt even came loose, so pretty happy about that. And again, the problem we're running into, this swivel is not swiveling, it's stuck on what's left of the flex line. Now typical vehicles don't have this corrosion issue, but because this is a main truck, you know, we get a lot of salt and calcium put on the roads in the winter to help combat the snow situation and the ice. And that stuff just eats these vehicles alive. I mean, look at that. That's the other end of that flex line. And luckily these bolts are coming loose, but man, what a nightmare. So I'm gonna have to heat this nut. Hopefully that'll swivel. Otherwise I'm gonna be replacing brake lines too, which I don't really want to do if I can help it. Man, Hercules must have tightened that up. Mercy. Oh. Alright, so now we've got access to the ABS sensor, which was severed in the accident. Now you always want to sand this surface down because sometimes that rust can actually hold that ABS sensor up and it won't make the proper contact that it needs with the tone ring on the drive shaft itself that's inside this wheel hub. Luckily, it looks like this wheel bearing is relatively new and I don't think it's all that old, so everything is coming apart here really nice. And I just went ahead and I tucked a piece of paper in there. You don't really have to do that, but just makes it a little easier. And you want to just kind of visually look at that and inspect it and make sure, I don't know if that helps, make sure that that thing is fully seated before you put the fastener in. We're going to use the new hardware they gave us just because. I'm using my torque wrist so you can hear that. Click, 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 click. There you go. I went ahead and I put a zip tie around this ABS line just so that it doesn't get hung up when I put the brake rotor on there and whenever it's turning going down the road. Because look how tight that is in there. You don't want that chafing. It's not the easiest bolt to get started sometimes whenever you're holding that heavy caliper. There, I got that one on the bottom started. Now, you don't have to get these super duper tight, so you shouldn't need a 3-foot breaker bar like I had over here to undo these things. Alright, so I've got that ABS line on there. I'm going to have to come back another day to tackle these brake lines. I'm going to bring my torches with me. I'm starting to lose some sunlight, so I'm going to call it quits for the night. These brake lines have rubber coatings on them, which doesn't seem to help things. See this? Oh, nice. Sorry guys, you can't really see that, but I got this one to swivel on the line. Oh, man. Well, I'm really glad that I got those swivels freed up, because I really did not want to replace these steel brake lines. So now I should be able to get these in place. Always use these new crush washers. So I was able to actually get these old bleeders out of the caliper, which was surprising because I thought those were going to twist off, but I went ahead and got new bleeders. Alright, got the flex line installed, got the banjo fitting with the new copper washers installed, got a new bleeder, got the ABS all tied up where it should be. See if we can get these things bled out. Alright, I've got this side all done as well. Got the new bleeder, I got the ABS lines all clipped into where they should be. Hopefully these fittings will seal, but we'll find that out in just a minute. Alright, to get the hood open, I kind of had to gently massage this fender with precision tools. Alright, so I got my pressure bleeder with me. Let's go ahead and hook that up to the master cylinder and see if we can bleed these brakes. So one good thing, if you can see, is that there's still a brake fluid level, which means that the rear brakes should have no problem. If the front and rear brakes were disrupted, this reservoir would be completely empty. So I bought this MityVac down at the CarQuest up the road from me, probably 4 years ago. And it has been one of the tools that you just can't do without. If you're trying to do brake repair by yourself and you don't have a helper, this thing is a lifesaver. So it's got a lot of different covers for different master cylinders of various makes. And a little pricey, but this makes bleeding brakes a one-man job. Alright, so basically you have a pressurized vessel. It's got brake fluid, and it shoots brake fluid whenever I open up this valve to the master cylinder, which has an adapter that threads on, and that's got a dip tube about that, that length that sticks down into the master cylinder. So watch what happens whenever I turn this valve. So that is filling the master cylinder. And at the same time, it's pressurizing the system. So now that that MityVac is pushing on all these brake lines, you can see if there's any leaks. You can go around to each of the fittings and just double check, and that simulates someone stepping on the brake pedal. The only difference is that you don't have to continually pump the brake pedal to build pressure in the system. So this is a device that I use just to kind of see what's going on with the brake fluid as it comes out. Just get yourself a piece of clear hose and a bottle. Well, it used to be clear, but I've used it so long that now it's kind of brown. And just open the bleeder. Because that whole system is pressurized, it's going to force brake fluid through the lines. There it comes. Pretty cool device. Now let's go over to the other side. Now the cool thing about this pressure bleeder is that you don't have to wait for the pressure to build up every time. Like, so normally you'd pump the brake pedal, and then you'd have to hold the brake pedal, and then someone would bleed it like this. And then the pedal would go down to the ground, and then you'd have to close the bleeder, and they'd do it all over again. So this way you can literally just run gallons of brake fluid through the system and never have to do any pumping, which is, in my eyes, that's definitely the way to go. So I'm going to do this probably a couple times, both sides. So I've already got that much brake fluid out of there, and I got to keep going until I get all the bubbles out, and then we'll test the pedal and see how it goes. Alright, so went inside the truck. It's got a really good pedal. I had to bleed this a few times more. Now, whenever I fire this up for the first time, the ABS modulator may have a little air in it, so I might have to do this all over again, but that's just par for the course. But yeah, that worked really good, no leaks, so I'm real happy with that. I got a few more parts to put on, and I should have the tires ready to go. And we can start rolling this thing. That's going to be interesting. Be quite a lot of work to see this thing finally move on its own again. That'll be a whole nother video though. All right. So the UPS guy and the post office guy brought us some more packages. So Rough Country shocks. And Mopar shock towers. I don't know if you guys can see that at all, but that's the part number if you can. So these ought to go on pretty slick, so let's get those on the old Dodge. Alright, so this is what you get. Looks like upper bushings. The shocks themselves. Some nice heavy washers. And the other pair of bushings and block nuts. Cool. Those look pretty nice. These are designed for lifted trucks such as this. Looks like a really nice shock. The easiest way I've found to install shocks is to install the bushing, install the washer on the bottom of that bushing, and then put this strap back on that these things are shipped with. See how that one doesn't have the bushing yet? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in the coil spring, and then I'm going to put the shock mount on, bolt it in place, and then I'm going to cut this strap, and it's going to slowly seat itself perfectly with very minimal effort and no squish fingers. Alright guys, so this is the part where you gotta be quick. Once you cut this, you've only got a few seconds to get that little plastic piece. Ow. You just kind of have to help guide that up. And just like that, the shock is in place, ready for the upper bushing. Come on now, scissors. Perfect. Alright, so that's all there is to it. Those shocks go in pretty easy, and I think those nitrogen shocks should perform pretty good with bigger tires and a lift and everything else. So cool. Alright, I'm happy to say that we are finally to the point where I can put the tires on this truck. Everything is pretty much intact, ready to go. It's not aligned by any means. And does this mean that we're all done? Absolutely not. This is just going to help me get this truck rolling, driving under its own power, so that I can get this thing over to the shop and actually begin the process of getting the rest of this thing straightened out. But at least now we have suspension under it. Everything is tight. We've got steering, we've got brakes. I mean, we're pretty much all set. So I'm going to put these tires on here, and I'll show you guys the truck off the blocks for the first time in, I think, 5 months. I think this is going on 5 months since the accident. So these are the tires we're using. These are big 35-inch tires. We had to replace one of the rims. So we're gonna get those bad boys on this thing and see how it looks. heavy tires. Can finally get this blocking out from underneath this thing. It's gonna seem weird having a moving truck in the dooryard. Well guys, she's 100% sitting on its wheels again. That is a cool feeling. Well, it's good to see the Dodge on the ground again with its own tires underneath it. So that's going to wrap up this video, and next video we're going to get this thing over to the shop. That way we can put a new radiator in it, get the thing so it can actually move around without having to worry about it overheating or anything. So a lot of progress has been made. Looking good.